Welcome back to another episode of Meet the Mission, where we take you behind the scenes with the people and technologies driving impact across Parsons and around the world. Today's episode is all about protecting major events, from Mardi Gras to the World Cup, and the capabilities that keep millions of people safe in some of the most complex environments imaginable. We're diving into two areas where Parsons is truly leading the industry: counter-unmanned aircraft systems, or CUAS, and advanced biometrics. To help us unpack it all, we're joined by two experts who live this mission every day. From Dustan Hellwig, SVP of Rapid Growth, who brings deep counter-UAS experience and firsthand experience supporting high-visibility events where seconds matter and seamless integration is key. And Cory Coyne, Strategic Account Manager, representing Parsons' work in biometrics, a capability that's shaping everything from secure event planning to future smart city design. Together, we'll explore how our teams rapidly deploy command centers, integrate with multiple agencies, share real-time analysis and intelligence, and help safeguard some of the biggest gatherings in the world. So, can each of you introduce yourselves, your roles at Parsons, and also just let the audience know where you guys are located city-wise so that they have an understanding geographically where you're working. So we'll start with you, Cory.
Yeah, absolutely. My background came from time supporting U.S. military and parts of the interagency. I first came to Parsons back in 2020 and really got interested in some of the technology they were bringing to the field and working with federal law enforcement in support of rapid identification in the field for individuals with warrants, things like that. And then some of the good uses that could really come out of that. So making sure that separated minors are reunited with, parents, things like that. So I think there was a lot of very good uses for it that, we've seen Parsons try to advocate for
Yeah.
responsible usage of biometrics, and how do we use that in the right way forward so that we don't wind up with, like as you mentioned earlier, some of that fear of the government and access to all this information on all of us.
Yep, absolutely. That's awesome. Also, tell me where you're located.
So I work out of the National Capital Region. We work between a couple different Parsons facilities and then do a lot of work at different government sites in the area. So as a strategic account manager, one of the things I really do is working with those customers to help understand what is it they need. Our goal is not to just be someone selling them something, but to be that partner that helps them identify how do we provide not just a capability now, but to continue to evolve it to be what meets their evolving mission requirements for the next 5 to 10 years. That we want to be able to offer, if we are not the solution that meets that capability, how do we bring that capability to them and offer
Yeah.
that?
Absolutely. And in this region, I think there's so many opportunities and you interact with so many people and entities that it's kind of like a never-ending pool of opportunity, especially like in this region. So I definitely think that's interesting.
Absolutely. And the
Well,
ability to tie in some of the best offerings from multiple vendors to offer a
yeah,
more enterprise holistic solution.
yep, absolutely. All right, Dustin, same question. Tell people about yourself, what's your role, and then also location.
Absolutely. So I live in Colorado Springs, just north of Colorado. I've been out here for 25 years. I started a company in April of 2000 named CTI that Parsons acquired last year. So I came to Parsons through acquisition. Happy to be here. I'm currently working on an organization that we call Rapid Solutions Execution Cell, which is essentially a clearinghouse for the company to help with modern, non-traditional, adaptive, rapid execution, very much in alignment with what the Department of War is doing and really all of U.S. government. After 36 years of GovCon, that's how long I've been doing this. I've worked on
Yeah.
everything from counter integrated air defense systems to counter improvised explosive devices to counter unmanned systems, and really a holistic counter threat capability set, a lot of which is integrated through and operated with government open platforms like what we call TAC, the Tactical Assault Kit, or the civilian version, we call it the Team Awareness Kit, which is really at the core of the solutions that we'll be talking about today.
Okay. And then do you spend a lot of time, I'm assuming you're based in Colorado, but do you spend a lot of time traveling geographically to kind of have all of your engagements and meet with your stakeholders?
Yeah, the best example of that is United's been kind enough to make me a global services member, so that indicates how much I have
Oh,
to fly. So I'm on
oh, I
board
don't even,
planes a lot.
you, oh my goodness, I've never even heard of that. And that's amazing. So I can imagine you're transiting the globe quite often.
I get around.
Yeah. All righty. So, for listeners new to these topics, how would you describe counter UAS and biometrics in simple terms? Like, break it down. We got listeners across YouTube, Spotify, like all over. Simple. So, I'll start with you, Dustin. Tell me how you would explain it.
Sure. So we start with situational awareness. So understanding what's going on in the environment, and that includes preparation prior to these major events, these major sporting events or major security events, even social events like Mardi Gras that require protection. Obviously, a bad event happened there a couple of years ago, and we certainly don't want those things to happen. So I like to call it in the military side, we call it intelligence preparation of the battle space. But in
Okay.
these kinds of environments, we just call it, let's call it preparation of the environment. So understanding what normal looks like, what are the normal levels of activity? What are the normal levels of drone activity or UAS activity in that environment? And then that way, when an event does happen and we're monitoring the event live with deployed sensors, whether they're optical or radio frequency or other modalities that we use for detection of these objects, we can understand what looks like normal activity and what doesn't. Is this some kid that's just trying to get an overfly of the stadium to get a cool picture of a particular football
Yeah.
game? Or is it an actual nefarious actor who's trying to either observe something they shouldn't or deploy an effect against the civilian populace to create terror? So that's a very important part of it. We start there. And then, of course, there's what are the allowable response measures? Obviously, in the United States, over a major sporting event, we don't want to just start shooting things down out of the sky.
Easy.
So generally, it's more of an interdiction operation, interoperating
Mhm.
with law enforcement, public safety, and the like, so that we do a measured response. And then that can escalate if and as needed. But our part is really employing all the tools that allow those operations to be handled in an orderly, informed, and within authorities manner. So that's really the foundation of counter UAS from our perspective. Obviously, everybody hears about drones in the news. Everyone's pretty familiar with what it is. We tend to keep a little close to the chest how we identify them and how we know what they're doing and where they're at. But all that feeds into this situational awareness capability that we deploy in the command centers.
So I just have a question, and coming from, I sit on, the cybersecurity side of things, and one of the things we're always trying to do is figure out how to promote information that looks anomalous. When you're doing something like that and trying to be prepared to understand what is like normal versus anomalous behavior at like a major world event, I mean, there should be a lot of data to triage and a lot of data to go through. Do you guys have, I guess, techniques for how you kind of quickly filter through anomalous versus non-anomalous behavior?
Yeah, I mean, we use machine learning for
Yeah.
sure to understand what patterns of life look like and to trigger anomaly detections. And at times it's just normal analytic processing. So we have an array of sensors in the environment. That data is flowing through the TAC architecture or supporting architectures that are integrated to TAC. And then we use software to
Right.
monitor activities and understand what looks normal and what doesn't. And we do things as simple as like my team was at a recent sporting event and they wired up a light that flashed in the command center. So when the software detected an anomalous event, it would start flashing the light, and that told everybody to stop drinking coffee and get to their post because we have something that we
Wow.
need to respond to. And something that simple can be highly effective in a
Yeah,
complex environment like this.
absolutely. All right, Cory, what about you? How, in simple terms, how would you explain biometrics and kind of the work that we do at Parsons in that arena?
Yeah, well, I'd start off with biometrics are the same things that people use every day and maybe without even thinking about it. And that would be unlocking
Mhm.
your cell phone with your face, unlocking a laptop with your finger, a lot of different things that we see. Talking about how do you get into a large facility? A sporting event where you're not stopping to show a ticket, it's not slowing things down, backing it up, but utilizing something like facial recognition across the crowd as they're entering to make sure that they have an approved ticket and they're good to enter, so that you get that. It slows down it prevents, I'm sorry, the problems you would run into with that
Mhm.
entry control, the backing people up. So really, and then the next step to that even is going on and enabling people to walk up to the stand and actually just purchase a drink or food without having to take out a credit card. And again, using facial recognition and account previously created. So there's a number of different ways it impacts us every day. What we do
Yeah.
at Parsons is we have an enterprise intelligence solution that really enables identity intelligence. And we allow, with a number of proprietary devices, the capture of face, finger, iris, voice, scars, marks, and tattoos, associating a DNA sample, palm, packaging that all up into a compliant format and submitting it. We also provide the architecture to get that file to national or private databases and then return responses in real time. So we work closely with our customers to shape that and then to continually add new capabilities to really ensure that we're at the forefront of that and meeting those national security requirements.
Yeah,
So
I'd
you
like to
said
add on
some.
to that. Sorry, Candace.
Oh, go ahead. No, go
The
ahead, and then I'll
combined
ask my question.
the combined capabilities, it's exciting for us coming into the Parsons family and combining with solutions like Cory has. So when, for example, we do an interdiction operation against a UAS controller, we can use the biometrics to quickly verify the identity of that person. Is this a bad actor, or is it just some teenager that, has never hit the system before? Sorry to interrupt.
No,
No,
you're fine.
absolutely.
It's perfect.
Yeah. And I think that's the exciting part about Parsons is it brings such a wide offerings of capabilities and then the ability to augment what we currently do. We have a new capability that we've delivered that's in pilot right now for a multi-factor biometric enabled access control. So that confirming someone that you're able to create a badge for and then verify that badge with biometrics to confirm access to an area. And then going beyond just simply access to a larger facility, but smaller portions within that facility, you can have varying levels of access.
Exactly. So I want to talk about kind of what the timeline has looked like in terms of demand. So have you seen more demand for these types of solutions grow as more organizations aim to secure large public events? One that comes to mind is kind of our technologies and how we're supporting the World Cup. But like, what does the demand look like now versus maybe 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah, it's increased tremendously. I think the real world events that show the potential positive and negative impacts of high speed, fast moving drones in any environment creates a lot of uneasiness on part of obviously public safety as well as attendees. People want to feel comfortable and have fun at these
Mm.
events, not worry about their public safety. And unfortunately, there's been a number of real world events that show how these things can be, put at risk. So there's a lot of activity at all levels of government. There are a number. One neat thing that the U.S. does is we stand up these task forces, which are
Mhm.
combined entities of Northern Command, FBI, various other interested parties that whose role it is to help secure these events. They create these task forces that really help with authorities because
Mhm.
different organizations bring different authorities to the table and what sensors they're allowed to deploy, like Cory was mentioning, and what data they're allowed to retain and process. These task forces bring varieties of authorities to bear. And what we really try to get after is what we call left of launch indications and warnings. So we want to make sure that we're being proactive, not reactive in these environments. The good thing that I always find as a U.S. citizen is we rarely hear about all the things that our government
Right.
is doing to secure the homeland. And believe me, it's a lot. They do a
Yeah.
lot. We just don't always hear about it because they don't want to create a bunch of unrest, across the populace that we're constantly under attack, whether that's in cyberspace or physical
Right.
space or whatever space. But believe you me, there's a lot of activity out there and a lot of money and energy and work being done to ensure that these things are safe and secure. And I'm proud to be a part of that. I think Parsons plays a good, positive, major major role in those activities, especially as we bring more of our disparate corporate capabilities together, from things like our traffic management infrastructure, which is supporting the upcoming sporting events, things that we're doing with tactical assault kit and public safety, and then of course the biometric and other related capabilities out of our ES business unit as well. So I think it's great seeing it all come together from Parsons for the government.
Yeah. One of the things, and you mentioned, we don't get to hear all of the amazing things that the government is doing is to make sure that we're safe. And also there's another aspect to it of, increasing the attack surface, right? If they know, if adversaries know kind of the capabilities we're deploying, then that makes, the attack surface greater. So that's another counter to that too. It's just, there's a lot of really good things happening, and we just, don't always share all the information related to it, but it's definitely a wonderful thing to be a part of the process to secure.
Yeah, and very quickly, at a recent major sporting event, we had over 100 unauthorized drone detections in the airspace around the event.
Wow.
So those numbers are sobering, and my guess is that that's going to increase greatly. That we're just at the front end of this threat.
Absolutely. So Cory, what are your thoughts that, related to the growth in demand, maybe as comparable to 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah, I think it's within the biometrics market, it's exciting. We've seen facial recognition algorithms are improving and are getting more and more accurate, which is great because it offers that contactless capability to rapidly identify someone and confirm who they are, which allows us as a populace to try to cut down on lines, improve, getting people into secured areas. So I think there's a lot of really good things coming out of that. Where I see us going, and I'm very excited about, is some of our new offerings allow people to kind of leverage existing camera systems and then add biometrics to that. So how do they make it more useful? What they're currently paying for, let's build onto it. Instead of buying everything new, augment your current capability with AI and machine learning to identify people in area they shouldn't be, so that person's not watching a camera. We're able to kind of streamline and reduce some of that load on people that are worried about watching 20 cameras simultaneously. Let's use AI to identify when there's an issue and draw their attention. Let's use AI and ML to go through and do some of that pattern analysis to help us identify a threat before it's a problem. Well, that can get us, like we said earlier, that left a bang. How do we identify a threat and informed an educated response quickly to mitigate any type of damage? So I think biometrics plays a key role in that. And I think our ability to integrate in some of the other capabilities that we're talking here are key. The ability to flatten communications, to take that photo from identified of a drone, pass it forward, the ability to collect a latent print off of that drone and submit that up. And then working with, like the FBI, we're able to, potentially get an examiner to look at it and get a quick response back. So it all comes down to who are those authorities, who's involved. But I think there's a lot of very interesting things out there.
So, and you guys have gone through a lot of capabilities and technology, so I don't want to be redundant, but specifically if we look at just one event like the World Cup, are there any things that are the most, if you were to talk about one or two of our capabilities or technologies that we're bringing to that, and maybe they differentiate from like things that you would have looked at for a more publicly open event like Mardi Gras, what are the talking points that you'd say are the most like important technologies we're bringing to events like the World Cup?
Yeah, I'll certainly jump in. So two of the biggest challenges we have are sensor density and assured communications, like being able to share the information. Because from our perspective, especially bringing TAC to bear, it's not just situational awareness, it's shared situational awareness. That's a key part, is that people across all the echelons of response are seeing a consistent picture so that the response is performed in a consistent manner, and we're not just running around like chickens with our head cut off. I think that's key because there's limited resources, right? We don't have unlimited numbers of police officers, unlimited numbers of sensors, and certainly communications can be disrupted or congested, especially at these large events when everyone's wanting to take pictures and post to social media. So we have to have assured dedicated comms to make sure this data is shareable without huge cost, which is the advantage of leveraging in situ wireless communications and the like. So all of those key features we can bring with partners to ensure that we have the infill of sensor density, that we have the right sensor types and the various modalities that help us understand the complex environment, that we can leverage in situ comms, but also can bring special use comms where and when necessary. And then from our perspective, that tactical assault kit or team awareness kit at the core for that shared situational awareness across all of the participants.
Sure. What about you, Cory? Is that Dustan was mentioning like some of the challenges that we're trying to solve at these real world events. Are there any that you feel like, what are the biggest challenges and what is our response to those?
Yeah, I think the shared situational event is one of the hardest things. It's such a large environment, including so many different elements and agencies supporting. How do you take, say, a threat identified in one area? And again, I tend to default to, I appreciate the respecting that not everyone wants their face on camera or detected. When you wind up at larger events like this, there are security concerns. If an individual is identified as a threat, how are you able to leverage those cameras to identify him? And then once you've identified that individual in a section with, say, 10,000 people, how do you get someone on the ground to that person? So the ability to integrate mobile devices with that, where you can direct people to a certain ground area, they can take out a phone, pan across to their phone, and they can now identify that individual and they know who they're looking for. I would say I would offer a second example of that would be having a child separated from parents at a major event like that. How are you able to get them linked back up? That same capability, when they registered to get tickets, offers you the potential, the opportunity to identify a family member in the stadium and reunite the child with that and make sure that you're not sending them off, with someone that's not a parent or guardian. So I think there's a lot of positives and negatives that you can both help address with it. So at the end of the day, I think we're out there working with these agencies and organizations to how do we improve their customer experience? How do we make it easier for them to get in securely? How do we make it easier for them to buy food and they get back to their seat and to enjoy the show?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll break it down for us. I want us to kind of walk through a scenario. What does it look like when our teams arrive on site? How quickly can we integrate into the existing command center? What does that look like tactically?
I've been jumping in. I'll let Cory go first on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. I hate to say it depends, but it does depend a little bit. I mean, what architecture do they have in place? What sensors are available? What data do they have? I think it's a matter of, usually we always like to do as much as we can beforehand to understand what we're falling in on so that once we hit the ground, we hit the ground running. And I've always loved that about this organization, that is a forward-leaning element that will 100% look at how do they support the customer first before there's any other conversations, that it's always understanding what is being required so that when we get there, we have the right people, we have the right equipment, we've done the right work on the backside.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and we actually send developers forward early. So get developers on site that can do the data integrations that are required, because all these different organizations, all these different participants, especially at the state and local level, because they tend to procure their material solutions independent of any organizing influence or central command, so to speak. So doing those data integrations up front so that you have that information flow across all those participating organizations for that, again, shared situational awareness. TAC's really good at that. They have a plugin architecture that's been developed and matured for years that allows you to rapidly integrate new information sources that feed that common operational picture that's then used for the response measures. I think another important part is to understand what early on in preparation of the event, what is doable? What are you allowed to do and what are you not allowed to do? And I think the technology selection of all these things that we're discussing can be heavily focused on what you think. Walk through some of those use cases, walk through some of the response measures of what might or is likely to happen so that you're practiced. That's really the buildup. That way, when something real happens, it's not the first time you're coming across it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, before I've been very appreciative of you guys taking out the time to kind of walk through our audience, like what are our capabilities. I'd love to hear from you, from your perspective, having been in this space for a while. What are some of the lessons learned that have influenced how we, Parsons, approaches security today? Like, what are some of the key takeaways that were, you know, important for your teams or for yourselves to kind of influence how Parsons does security? So we'll start with you, Cory. What do you think about?
Yeah, I think it's just being diligent and being aware that security isn't something you're good on. I mean, it is a continually, shifting standard that we're continuing to work with our customers to meet and identify risks and threats and mitigate them as best we can. As far as I would say security within our application and our standards, we're continuing to integrate some of the newest capabilities, new vendors, new algorithms, things like that, that make what we offer a better quality product for end users. So that
Mhm.
just is a continual evaluation and an open conversation, I think, with a lot of our government customers as to what is that requirement they have for it.
Okay, that makes sense. What about you, Dustin? What do you think are some of the lessons learned that you've taken away that influence how Parsons approaches security?
I think we, and not just Parsons, but the entire community, tend to get hyper focused on specific threat vectors. Like counter UAS is a major
Mhm.
thing, right?
Yeah.
Counter IED back in the late 2000s was the thing. And most of that is financially driven because that's where the politics and the money tends to flow. But we
Mhm.
can't forget about all the other corollary threat vectors that UAS may be a delivery mechanism for. And by the way, there's unattended ground systems or unmanned ground
Mhm.
systems and other delivery mechanisms too. The air is just most accessible and probably least costly right now, and the scariest because it can go over fences and over stadium edges and over there's all kinds of
Yeah.
ways that it could. So we certainly have to pay attention to that, but we can't get hyper focused on just that. I also think we tend to stay in our lanes a little too much, and what Parsons is doing
Mhm.
well is an integrated campaign of bringing all these disparate capabilities together, whether it's traffic management infrastructure and cybersecurity critical infrastructure, whether it is counter UAS, effectors and sensors, or whether it's integrating software like we've been talking about with TAC. It's those composite solutions that really move the needle. But our customers sometimes tend to get over focused on buying the material solutions. Let me go buy another box. Let me go buy
Yeah.
another thing. And then those things don't work together. And you end up with a staffing problem or a training problem or a workflow problem because these things sit in their silos and don't integrate well. So I think Parsons is really in a unique position to help solve those kinds of challenges.
Absolutely.
I could follow that one up real quick too. And I think one of the biggest problems we see routinely is technology is always assumed to be intuitive and easy to use. And routinely it is, but there is a training aspect to every piece of technology out there. And I think that as I learned throughout my career, it is always that was we brought up earlier, it is the training and rehearsing is key to that. We can hit the ground running, but if you haven't trained and rehearsed and prepared what you're going to do when you identify a drone or have a person of interest, it kind of things fall down a little bit. So I would say, again, everything we have, I think continuing to work with customers on that training and rehearsing has been a key thing.
And I think maturity of capabilities, leveraging existing mature technologies and solutions. I had an Army colonel tell me once, he said, now is a valid requirement. And sometimes the acquisition community forgets that now is a valid
Yes.
requirement. So Parsons
Yes.
has a plethora of mature, fielded, available solutions that can be bought today through rapid acquisition conduits that we can help the government field quickly.
I love that. Now is can be a requirement, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
important. So final thoughts. What are you, each of you, both excited about for the future of counter UAS and biometrics? What are some things that you're looking forward to most for the future of this space? We'll start with you, Cory, and we'll finish with you, Dustin.
Yeah, no, I think continuing to work with the U.S. government and a lot of our partners on how do we improve security.
Mhm.
I mean, it has been a great thing. Supporting law enforcement customers and their requirements to enable individuals with warrants. Supporting natural disasters, identification of deceased and reuniting with their families. Reuniting separated minors with their parents, things like that. So I think there's a lot of good opportunities for that going forward. I think devices are hopefully continuing to become more cost effective. And I would say, given kind of the threats out there and things like that, the more information you have like that, the easier it is to counter. So really, that identity verification component to it.
Absolutely. What about you, Dustin? What are you most excited about for the future in this area?
Well, I hate to pile onto the obvious, but of course, the application of AI in a lot of ways to
Yeah.
offload, like Cory said, the human activities because they're overloaded and overburdened already. So the more we can bring that to bear, the better. I love application of these capabilities to counter human trafficking. That's near and dear, I hope, to everyone's heart. And so I love highlighting that as yet another threat vector that's important, especially in these chaotic social sporting events. Children can get lost and disconnected, and unfortunately, there's bad actors that take advantage of those situations. I'm also excited about some of the technological integrations we're doing, looking at things like 360-degree wide area cameras integrated
Mhm.
with our SmartCam 3D software, which allows us to overlay the data ecosystem on the full motion video and then farm out chiplets of video to first responder devices and tap into our traffic management system for webcams and traffic cameras and the like, and body cameras that are being worn by first responders.
Well, I appreciate again you guys taking time out. I want to turn to the audience a little bit and just make sure that they know where to find resources on Counter UAS. So we will make sure that when we drop this in YouTube, Spotify, whatever platform people are consuming this content on, they'll know how to navigate to Parsons' website and kind of more information as well as careers. Because the first thing people always ask me is like, that episode was awesome. Are they hiring? So I won't send anybody directly to you, but I'll drop the Parsons careers link so people can go look and see what opportunities are available. And I want to remind the audience that if you're, curious about anything, they can drop comments, ask questions, and we'll make sure that we source those to you, Cory and Dustin, so that you can weigh in on any of the commentary that comes from the episode. But again, I want to thank you so much for your time. And, this was very enlightening. And I think this is going to be a good episode for folks to kind of learn more about what's out there and what Parsons is doing in this arena. So thank you again. Cory, you got
That'd be
any
awesome.
final shout outs? Anything you want to mention to the folks before I let you guys go?
No, unfortunately, I don't have any freeware I can hand out. So I'm definitely happy to answer any questions any of the users may have and talk through, help anyone shape any requirements or answer any questions about capabilities they may have.
All right, I love that. Thank you so much again, and have a wonderful afternoon, morning, evening, wherever people are listening from. And until next time, continue to imagine next.
Thanks.
Thank you.